All right, welcome. You know that feeling when you're staring at a report and it's just a sea of jargon? You feel like you're drowning in data speak? Well, today, we're going to fix that. We're going to turn all that confusing stuff into a super practical tool for thinking clearly. And we're kicking things off with a question that seems really simple on the surface, but it actually uncovers a huge mistake that a lot of people make. Okay, so I'm going to start with a bit of a trick question here. What's the average of remote, hybrid, and on-site? The answer? Well, it's a completely nonsensical question, right? And that is exactly the point. Deep down, we all know you can't just treat all data the same way, but you'd be surprised how often we accidentally do it. And this idea nails the problem perfectly. It really is like trying to bake a cake with a ruler. You're not just going to get a weird-looking cake, you're going to end up with something totally inedible. And in the world of data, that means making bad conclusions and, honestly, some pretty terrible decisions. So, how do we stop doing that? Well, the solution is actually pretty straightforward. We need to learn the basic grammar of our data. Once you get this, the confusion starts to clear up. So let's dive into the 4 fundamental levels of measurement that are going to be our guide. Okay, the easiest way to keep these straight is this handy little acronym, NOIR. That's N-O-I-R. And I want you to think of these like levels in a video game. Each one you unlock is more powerful and more flexible than the last, kind of building on the skills you learned before. All right, let's start with the first 2 levels. First up is nominal. This is the absolute simplest. Think of it as just putting things into buckets or giving them names. It's like sorting your laundry into whites and colors. There's no mathematical order here. HR isn't better or higher than finance. They're just different categories. Then we level up to ordinal. Now the order does matter. A senior position is definitely higher than an associate position. But, and this is the big catch, the gaps between the ranks aren't equal. That jump from associate to senior could be a small step, while the jump from senior to manager is like a giant leap. We know the order, but not the distance. Okay, now we're getting into the really powerful stuff. Next is interval data. With interval, the gaps between the numbers are finally equal and meaningful. Think about a thermometer. The distance between 10 and 20 degrees is exactly the same as the distance between 80 and 90 degrees. But the 0 is kind of arbitrary. 0 degrees Celsius doesn't mean there's a complete absence of heat, right? It's just a point on a scale. And that brings us to the final boss, the gold standard, ratio data. This is where you have a true, meaningful 0. $0 in salary means you have literally no money. 0 years of experience means you have none. And because of that true 0, you can finally make those really powerful comparisons, like saying, this person earns twice as much as that person. So, that's a lot to remember. How do you figure out what kind of data you're looking at in the real world? Well, here's a super simple decision tree. Just ask yourself this first question. Can you put the categories in a meaningful order? If the answer is no, like with remote or hybrid, boom, you've got nominal data. Easy as that. If the answer is yes, then we go to the next question. Okay, so you've established there's an order. The very next question you ask is, are the distances between those values equal and meaningful? Think about a performance rating, like meets expectations versus exceeds. Is the gap between those the same as exceeds and outstanding? Probably not. It's subjective. So that's ordinal data. But if the gaps are equal, like points on a test score, then you're getting much closer to the top. And here it is, the final question that separates the good from the great. Does 0 mean a complete and total absence of the thing you're measuring? If the answer is no, like our 0 degrees Celsius example, then you're dealing with interval data. But if the answer is a big, resounding yes, like $0 or 0 years of experience, then congratulations, you've hit the jackpot. You've got ratio data, the most powerful kind of all. Okay, so we've got the grammar of data down. Now, it's time to meet the cast of characters. I want you to think of every research study like it's a story, a movie. And in this story, the variables are the actors, each playing a specific role. If you don't know who the main character is, you're never going to understand the plot. So every story has 2 main characters, the independent variable and the dependent variable. The independent variable, let's call it the IV, is the cause. It's the hero of our story, the thing we manipulate or change. Think of it as introducing a new training program. The dependent variable, or DV, is the effect. It's the outcome. We're watching to see if our hero did anything. In our example, that would be employee performance. It's really that simple, the cause and the effect. But, most good stories aren't that simple, are they? A basic cause and effect plot can be kind of boring. The real juice, the real insight, comes from the plot twists. And in our data story, those plot twists are called moderators and mediators. Now, this is where a lot of people get tripped up, but I promise you, once you see it, the difference is actually super clear. All right, let's set the stage with a really basic story. The hypothesis is simple. Leadership training leads to better manager performance. Cause, effect, seems straightforward enough, right? But is that really the whole story? First, let's introduce a moderator. Think of a moderator like a volume dial on a stereo. It can turn the relationship between our cause and effect up, making it stronger, or turn it down, making it weaker. It's the variable that answers the crucial questions, for whom does this work? Or when does this work? So the training might help, but the effect isn't the same for everybody. In this case, maybe manager experience level is our moderator. The training could be a total game changer for new managers, but for the seasoned veterans, it barely moves the needle. So the effect of the training, it depends on their experience. That's the key phrase for a moderator. It depends on. Okay, now for our other plot twist, the mediator. This one is different. If a moderator tells you when or for whom something works, a mediator tells you how or why it works. It's the mechanism, the secret sauce. I like to think of it as the domino in the middle of a chain reaction. It's the step that connects the cause to the effect. So, back to our training program. The training doesn't just magically make managers better. It works because it builds their confidence. And that increased confidence is what leads them to perform better. See the chain? Training leads to confidence, which leads to performance. Confidence is our mediator. It's the how, the why, it all works. Okay, let's lock this in, because getting this right is crucial. Let's put them head to head. A moderator answers for whom or when. It changes the strength of a relationship, like a volume dial. The key phrase is, it depends on. A mediator, on the other hand, answers how or why. It explains the mechanism of the relationship, like a domino chain. The key phrase there is, it works by, or the reason is. They tell two completely different but equally important parts of your data story. All right, time to bring it all home. We've learned the grammar with no R, and we've met the whole cast of characters, independent, dependent, moderators, and mediators. So now, let's use everything we've learned to break down a real-world example and see how these pieces come together to tell a full, complete, and actually useful story. So let's imagine we're looking at a company's workplace wellness program. The basic question is simple, right? Does participating in the program, our independent variable, lead to better employee health and job satisfaction, our dependent variable? But of course, we know there's more to it. We need to investigate the plot twists, like the role of supervisor support and the actual process of changing health behaviors. So we run the numbers and find that yes, the program seems to work. But here's where the moderator comes in. The effect isn't the same for everyone. We find that the program's impact is way, way stronger. The volume is turned up to 11 in departments where supervisors actively encourage it. In places where managers don't care, the effect is tiny. So the success of the program, it depends on supervisor support. That's our moderator. But how does it work? It's not magic. That's where our mediator comes into play. The program works because it successfully encourages people to change their actual behaviors. They start exercising more, they make better nutrition choices. Those new, healthier behaviors are the domino in the middle. They are the mechanism that actually leads to improved health. The program works by changing behavior. And just like that, we have the full story. Instead of just saying the wellness program works, we can now say something so much more powerful. We can say, our wellness program improves employee health, but its impact is much stronger when supervisors support it. And the reason it works is because it helps employees build better daily health habits. Now that is an insight you can actually do something with. See the difference? So the next time you're looking at a spreadsheet or a report, I want you to remember this. The numbers, they're just the beginning. The real actionable insight comes from understanding the characters, the plot, and all the little twists in your data. So I'll leave you with a question to take with you. What's the real story your variables are telling you?